Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the story about Naruto. What if Naruto was the second Juubi 10 Tales Part 6, the last part. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please do support for more awesome content and also hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends and also support the creator of this fanfic. I have created many playlists, check it out in the channel. So let's start the video. Naruto sighed as he finished reading over the reports he had gotten from the root shinobi he had sent to Kiri to help Zabuza take down the Mizukage. Naruto knew that Gaara wasn't at fault for what he had done, but at the moment he needed to be stopped. From what Zabuza had written in the message, he had joined forces with Materumi, who had become the Mizukage in his world. Something wrong with Hokage-sama? Jiraiya asked the blonde in front of him. It had been 2 months since he had gotten the title of Goddamn Hokage, and a lot of things had happened. The relations with Kumo had reached a level of camaraderie that the two villages had never seen with another ally. The only remaining problem with their alliance was that the Hyuga clan still refused to accept Kumo as an ally. That also included the problem of Hinata and her hatred for him. Since he was with Narumi, who the female Hyuga was in love with, as well as being the one who forged the alliance between Kumo and Konoha, he had risen to the top spot of people she hated. After the invasion, Gaara decided that he might, as well, spend some time in the world and help bring Suna back to par with the other villages and had to retake the title of Kazekage with a little help from Naruto. Gaia had been allowed to stay with him to train to gain control of Shukaku for a few months. From what Gaara told him, he was allowed to stay for around 3 years before having to return to the afterlife. Afterwards, Gaia would return to Suna and take the title of Kazekage. Activity in Oto had gone silent. Naruto knew that the snake Orochimaru had something planned and had taken extra measures to make sure he didn't get his hands on Sayuri. He had decided to merge Team 7 and 9 and had added Sai in his place. Naruto glared at the sage before looking at Danzo and Hiruzen, who were sitting beside them. First, don't call me that. Second, our forces in Kiri have joined the rebellion, but at the moment they are at a stalemate. On top of that, Gaara's forces are slowly chipping away at the rebel armies. Materumi, the leader of the rebels, and the Mizukage in my world are leading them, but there have been sightings of men in black cloaks with red clouds heading towards Kiri. Naruto explained to his new group of advisors. He had gotten rid of the other two in favor of these three, since they had the same goals, unlike the two other elders who were in it for themselves. Akatsuki? Danzo said calmly. He had read up on everything he could find on the group and its members. That, along with the information Naruto had on them, helped him form teams to combat each one in case they ever attacked Konoha head-on. Exactly. From the descriptions I got, the two are Izumi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki. Mei-chan and Zabuza may be strong, but Mei-chan will not be able to take on 3S rank shinobi, and Zabuza isn't at the level needed for him to be able to take one out, being only a high A rank shinobi. Naruto said as he rubbed the bridge of his nose. Why did he have to accept this job again? Hiruzen inhaled from his pipe. So what will be our next move, the Naruto-kun? Hiruzen asked the young Kage, who growled out in frustration. Naruto looked out the window and out to his village. I'll join and take out Kisame and bring back Izumi-chan. I'll let Zabuza and Mei-chan handle Gaara. The blonde answered the former Hokage's question. He knew that it was irresponsible for a Kage to leave his village, but he couldn't let the Akatsuki keep control of Kiri. Are you sure that is a good idea? What if Orochimaru makes his move on Sayuri-chan? Hiruzen asked. Then we have to be ready for anything. When she gets back in 2 days, give her missions that will keep her in the village. Put up security measures around her at all times, have Anbu watch her at all times. Naruto ordered before they were interrupted by a knock on the door. Come in. From the other side of the door, Yugao walked in. She had left the Anbu after Heiat's death, but Naruto comforted her and had managed to convince her to remain a kunoichi and had appointed her one of his personal guards. Naruto-kun, she said with a small smile. Yugao-chan, you've returned early. Did something happen on your mission? Naruto asked the former Anbu, who shook her head no. No, everything went perfectly. I got what you asked for? Naruto asked her. The purple-haired woman nodded and unsealed 2 katanas. Naruto smiled as he took the 2 from her and strapped them to his side. Katanas? Jiraiya asked as he looked at the 2 swords Naruto had just gotten. Naruto smirked as he glanced at Jiraiya. These 2 swords aren't just any run-of-the-mill katanas. These are the Juuchi Yasamu and the Uarakai T. These are 2 ancient and powerful swords forged by 2 of the greatest swordsmiths to ever live. The Juuchi Isamu, or the 10,000 Cold Knights, is an evil sword that only cares for destruction and death. It is said that it will cut anything that crosses its path, whether it be evil or good. It is also said that if someone without the power to fight back the darkness within it draws it, they will become overcome by its evil. The Uwarakai, or the tender hands-on, is the opposite. It's a sword that only cuts those who are evil or deserve it. Naruto said as he drew the Juuchi Isamu. The air in the room rapidly cooled as a feeling of dread filled the office. The only one who was really affected by this was Yugao, since she wasn't cage level. Such an evil aura. Hiruzen said before turning to Yugao, who was shaking from the dark feeling in the air. Yugao-san, where did you find these swords? The former Hokage asked. Naruto-kun had learned that a cousin of Gato had gotten his hands on these blades and was planning on selling them away to missing nin. He believed that they were too powerful to be left in the hands of people who would use them for evil, so he sent me and a team to retrieve them. The former Anbu responded to the elder's question. It wasn't a hard job, as all the men had around 3 dozen untrained mercenaries, while they had 5 trained Anbu. I see. Hiruzen said. He couldn't help but agree with Naruto's decision to take the swords. If someone like Obito or Pain got their hands on such a powerful sword, the results would not be pretty. Naruto grinned as he put away the dark sword before he started walking towards the door. I'll be leaving for Kiri in 3 hours. I'll try to return as soon as I take out Kisame. I already tagged Zabuza-san when I fought him in the wave, so I'll be able to get there in a flash. Naruto said as he left the room with his Jinten. Later that day, Naruto had left the village and had appeared in the middle of a battle in Kiri. Really? Naruto said before he felt someone about to stab him. Drawing Juuchi Isamu, he turned as bisected the man in half through the waist. Naruto cringed at the sight, but he didn't have time as 3 more Kiri shinobi attacked him. Before they reached him, a massive cleaver decapitated the 3 before being caught by the Zabuza, who appeared in a shunshin. What are you doing here, kid? Or should I call you Hokage-sama? Zabuza said with a slight teasing tone as he killed another Kiri nin. I'm here to help. Reports have it that Kisame Hashigaki and Itachi Uchiha are going to aid Kiri against you guys. I'm going to take them out. Naruto said as he sheathed his sword and drew his second one. Jinten Light Speed Massacre. Naruto whispered as the entire battlefield slowed to a standstill, or black and white. Without any hesitation, Naruto blurred out of existence and appeared behind each Kiri nin before vanishing again. Appearing next to Zabuza, Naruto shaved Uwarakai, and with the click of the hilt hitting the scabbard, the entire world returned to normal, only that most of the Kiri nin exploded in blood, while some simply fainted. The rebel forces all looked confused before Zabuza got an evil idea. Hooray for the Yondaime Hokage Minato Namikaze. He yelled. In the spur of the moment, no one bothered to question that Minato was alive and not dead. Yeah. Thank you, Yondaime Dono. 3 cheers for Minato Namikaze. Naruto gritted his teeth in anger as once again people were calling him Minato. I'm not Minato Namikaze. Naruto yelled out, using his Juubi side to power up his voice, giving it a demonic tone. This was followed by Naruto punching Zabuza in the face by a Jinten enhanced punch. Fuck you, Zabuza. Naruto said before he felt a tap on his shoulder. Naruto turned to see Mei smiling at him a little too sweetly. I would appreciate it if you didn't knock out my second in command, she said to Naruto. Normally it scares the shit out of anyone who she targeted, but this was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He had faced the Juubi and Madara and had taken their power for himself. Oh, you must be Mei-san. Nice to finally meet you, Naruto said with a charming smile that made every woman including Mei blush. I see you are just as beautiful as all the rumors claim. I am Naruto Namikaze, the Godaime Hokage. The blonde said, the Uten user who was blushing at his comment about her. Yes, that would be me, Mei said as she regained her composure. She couldn't help but look over the cage's body. Even if he was younger than her, she had to admit that he probably had the best body she had ever had the pleasure of seeing. May I ask what you are doing here, Hokage Dono? Naruto became serious. I gained intelligence that the Akatsuki was sighted near Kiri. I came to make sure that they didn't interfere with the war, Naruto said as he looked where he had punched Zabuza. Mei frowned at this. Are you sure you're going to be able to handle this, Hokage Dono? From what I heard, they are all S-rank missing nin and travel in pairs, the rebel leader asked with a bit of concern for the blonde. He had helped her cause so much, and in a way he was the reason they were still able to fight the war thanks to Konoha's aid. Naruto smirked, of course I'm able to handle 2 Akatsuki members. Let me show you a bit of my power. Naruto said, as he made a hand sign. Purple flames appeared on the ground as the form of the King of Hell rose out of them. Rin, Naruto said with a wide grin. The King of Hell opened his mouth, but instead of the spray of green lights that was supposed to happen to revive the rebel forces, a loud yell echoed out. Let me out of here, Databane. The King of Hell started to shake, but closed its mouth to try and keep whatever was inside down. The shaking eventually turned very violent, causing the Kiri rebels to tense and prepare for battle. The King of Hell finally gave up and let out whatever was inside. Out of his mouth a rather beautiful red-haired woman walked out, clearly pissed off. Naruto's eyes widened when she saw Kushina walk out, but not in her Edo form, but fully revived. Shit, with all that's been going on I forgot that I trapped her in there, Naruto thought. Kushina looked around until she was the blonde wearing a Hokage hat. Minato-kun. She yelled as she ran and brought them into a strong hug. Zabuza couldn't help but chuckle at the blonde being mistaken for his father again. Naruto had to resist the urge to smash the Uzumaki woman into the ground for calling him that. That really had become something he hated. Kushina-san, like I said before, I am not Minato Namikaze. I am Naruto Namikaze. Naruto said, trying to keep calm. Kushina looked up at him with a childish glare. Liar. I may have believed that before, but seeing you with the cage hat proves that you are Minato-kun. The Redeed said to the blonde. Naruto sighed, I am not Minato. Tell me, did Yondaime ever have these eyes? Naruto said as he stared down at her in the eyes. Kushina gasped when she saw the red, rippling eyes with 9 tamo in them. They're beautiful, she thought, as she stared at the eyes, however she felt sad that it really wasn't Minato. I see, so how come I can't feel that snake's presence in my mind, or how my body no longer has cracks in it? She asked the blonde. Chucking was heard from Naruto, well, when I fought you and Hashirama I kinda forgot that the King of Hell which I used to store whatever it eats and can revive it completely if I give the order, and during the fight with Hashirama and after the fight with everything that happened I kinda slipped out of my mind. Naruto said as he scratched the back of his head sheepishly. Kushina did not take this well, little known fact, Kushina hated being ignored. What? How could you forget about me? Kushina yelled, feeling insulted that she had become an afterthought to the blonde after the battle. Everyone from the Kiri forces watched on, some of them were on the verge of breaking out in laughter that the person who had literally slaughtered an army was having this conflict with the Redeed. I'll make it up to you, I promise, Naruto said as he brought his hands up in defense. After I deal with the current situation. Naruto added as his eye flickered to Mei and Zabuza. Fine. But after this you're taking me and whoever else I want to come to the most expensive restaurant, and where are we? Kushina asked Mei, who replied Mizuno Kuni. And Mizuno Kuni. And you're paying for everything we eat, she said as she glared at the blonde. Naruto's head hung in defeat. Well, I did leave you trapped in there for a month, I guess I can do that. Naruto said before walking over to Mei. Mei, do you mind watching Kushina-san while I go what I came here for? Naruto asked the auburn-haired beauty. That's okay, honestly we thought we were done for when we started this battle. This was about half of Kiri's remaining army, and they outnumbered us 10-1. Mei said with a sigh. She wanted to say that they had it covered, but she knew that if the Hokage hadn't arrived when he did they would have all been dead by now. Really? I guess I don't know my own strength. Naruto said with a fox-like grin which caused all the shinobi around him to sweat drop. Oh yeah. I never finished the Rin Tensei. Naruto said as he prepared to activate his again and hopefully not have it get interrupted like before Jido Rin Tensei. Naruto said as he used the King of Hell to revive all the dead rebels. There. Naruto said before he was forced to a knee. Mei ran to the Hokage's side. Are you okay? She asked him as she handed him a soldier pill. Naruto happily took the pill and was glad that it didn't taste like Sakura's used to in his world. Yeah, damn, I never knew that it took that much out of someone to use that. Naruto said as he got back on his feet but still looked tired from it. No wonder Nagato died when he used it, it took over 4 tails of chakra. Naruto thought to himself. Saluted them before he vanished, a blur of speed. A few miles from Kiri, 2 men wearing black cloaks with red clouds walked towards the village. Naruto ran towards where he had felt Izumi and Kisam's chakra. Not only was he able to see the 2 Akatsuki members, but he was able to sense Yugura the Yondaime Mizukage approaching them. Damn it, I didn't expect him to meet up with them directly. If they plan on attacking the rebels now at the same time they would be slaughtered. Naruto said to himself as he was getting closer to the two Akatsuki members. Thanks to his Jinten, he was able to cover far more ground than Yugura and would get to them before the Jinchuriki was able to contact them. He really hoped that Izumi decided to join him and didn't fight. Managed to react fast enough to pull Kisame out of the way of Naruto's punch. Because of how fast he was going, Naruto wasn't able to turn and slid to a stop. Knowing that Kisame didn't know about Itachi actually being Izumi, Naruto decided to play ignorant about that fact. "So, we met. Itachi-san," Naruto said coolly as he looked at the two Nuke Nin. Itachi looked over Naruto's new outfit. The blonde had decided to play the role of Hokage and, as he got closer, he could see Kisame and Izumi in her Idich form resting by a stream that cut through the island. Jinten missile punch, Naruto thought as he channeled chakra through his right arm as he cocked it back as he shot towards the shark man. Izumi was barely able to see Naruto approaching them at the speed he was going at, but she dressed in his cage robes and Hokage hat. The blonde's bright blue eyes were already in his Tengen form, and his skin had paled to a paper white with two horns coming out of his forehead. Behind him were 8 tails coming out of his tailbone. "Naruto," Izumi said in shock at seeing the man who had learned her secret months ago look so different than he had before. She had seen him in both his base form and his tail beast form, but this one was new to her. The power output he was letting out surpassed even what he had used on her before. "So we meet again. Last time you caught me off guard with you, but you can't be both of us." Kisame said, smirking as he prepared for battle with them. He knew from the events at the Valley of the End that this wasn't even his final form, but if the blonde was underestimating him then he would capitalize on the opportunity. Naruto sighed and looked at Itachi. "Itachi-san, join me. I'll forgive your crime and give back as much as I can that you lost that day." The 8-tailed man said to the Uchiha, who looked into Naruto's eyes to see if he was lying. Itachi was able to see the pure honesty Naruto's eyes held. "I'm sorry, but I can't accept that offer," she said as she looked slightly sad. She wanted to go with Naruto, but with Kisame still having the chance to escape or anyone watching them, she couldn't risk the Akatsuki attack Konoha to kill her. Sighing, Naruto pulled out the Uchiha tea and got into a loose stance. His once warm eyes became cold as he stared at the two Akatsuki members. "Very well, then I'll have to take you back with force." With that, the Hokage shot forward. He was nearly too fast for either to react, but Kisame was able to bring Samehada up to block a blazing kick from Naruto that sent him flying back. Izumi pulled out a kunai and swung at but the blade was met by the Uchiha. Naruto twisted his sword, forcing the kunai out of Izumi's hand before thrusting forward at the Uchiha. The disguised female substituted herself with a log and came out behind Naruto, exhaling a large fireball at the 8-tailed Hokage. One of Naruto's tails slammed into the ground and brought up a large wall made up of coral from under the ground. Sensing Kisame coming back at him, Naruto ducked, avoiding a swipe from the shark sword. Naruto tried to sweep Kisame's legs out from under him, but the fishman jumped and swung his sword downward at Naruto. The former blonde smirked as one of his tails came up and wrapped around the sword. He could feel the blade trying to eat as much of his chakra as it could while it had the chance. Naruto's tail swung and released Samehada, and by connection Kisame sent them through a tree. He felt a surge of chakra and jumped away in time to avoid a spark of black flames from Izumi's Amaterasu. "You can't beat Naruto-kun. I will not lose like last time," Izumi said while her right eye was bleeding from using the Manjikyu. Naruto landed and shot forward towards the female Uchiha. The Akatsuki member braced herself for a physical attack from Naruto but was confused when he vanished into thin air. Before she could notice him, Naruto reappeared behind her, crouching. A twisted smirk was smeared across his face as he held his hands in a tiger sign. Kisame, who saw this, yelled out at her, "Watch out, Itachi." He screamed at her using her masculine name when he saw Naruto preparing a. Izumi's world slowed as she turned her head back to see Naruto smirking at her. Konohagakure hidden secret to jutsu technique, 1000 years of death. Naruto yelled before he shoved his fingers towards her asshole but miscalculated the angle and entered a different, much wetter one. Izumi's eyes widened as a bright red blush spread over her entire body. She let out an ear-piercing shriek as she went flying into the water. Kisame's jaw dropped when he saw what the Hokage had done, and it nearly hit the floor when he heard the girlish scream that Izumi let out, since he still only knew her as Itachi. Naruto chuckled when he saw Izumi land in the river. His musings ended with a red-orange giant torso exploding out of the water with a scream of rage from Izumi inside. She made no effort to hide the fact that she was a female from Kisame, as she stood in her Susanoo completely wet, her ponytail was undone, tears of blood leaked out of the corners of her eyes, while a bright pink blush was still spread across her nose. Looking at her cloak wrapping around her curvy body, which is around the same as Mei's only with a slightly larger chest size. Itachi is a chick. Kisame thought in absolute shock, even if he had a light pink blush from the beauty that was Izumi. However, he also saw the look of rage and embarrassment on her face as she glared at Naruto. If looks could kill, Naruto knew that he would be dead right now from the glare Izumi was giving him. "Hey Izumi-chan, are you okay?" he asked nervously before he jumped out of the way of a swing from her Susanoo. "You pervert!" she yelled before charging right at the Hokage without a second thought. Naruto jumped over a horizontal slash from the ethereal warrior before using a Shinra Tensei to block a vertical swing. Seeing Izumi going for a stab, he flew up into the air to avoid it. "Calm down Izumi-chan. It was just a joke," Naruto said before only to have to dodge another stab as the blade elongated towards him. From looking into her eyes he could see that they were taking some major damage and he knew that it was only speeding up the virus within her. "Yusaka Magatama," she said, as three Magatama tied together by a string of chakra formed in one of the free hands of the Susanoo. The energy warrior threw the attack at Naruto, who was still floating in the air. Holding out his hand, red and blue orbs of chakra gathered into a small black cone-shaped object. "Mini Biju Udama," Naruto said as he fired the attack to intercept the incoming attack from Izumi. The explosion from the colliding attacks could be seen for miles, and the shockwave cleared away any clouds. Time to end this, Naruto thought to himself as he vanished and appeared in front of Izumi's Susanoo. With a single swing of Uwarakai-T, Naruto was able to cut through the Susanoo barrier with ease. The blonde shot towards Izumi and slashed through him, coming out the other side of the Susanoo. Izumi stood frozen for a few seconds before looking down where Naruto had cut her. She could see that her cloak was cut clean through and fell into the water, but she herself had not been injured. Looking back at Naruto, the man was smiling at her. "What was that?" she asked the Hokage, who chuckled lightly as he sheathed his sword. It was then that she noticed that Naruto had released some sort of golden dust while he swung his sword at her. "You got cut by the Uwarakai-T without gaining an injury. This proves that you are a good person, as I thought. Now rest," Naruto said as Izumi's vision became blurrier than it was before and her body relaxed. The Hokage caught her as she was knocked out by the pollen. Creating a clone to take care of her, Naruto turned to Kisame, who was ready for battle once again. "I don't feel like playing around, Kisame, so I'll get to the point. I have to take care of Izumi-chan, and you don't want to die. Leave now or I'll end you," Naruto said as he flared his killer intent at the shark man, who, while sweating from the pressure Naruto was putting on him, just drew his sword. "I don't care who or what you are. I'll shave you off like all the rest," Kisame yelled as he charged at the man, who stood calmly with 8 tails whipping behind him. Naruto caught Samehada mid-swing with one of his tails and once again felt the sword rapidly devouring his chakra, but to him, it was like it was just taking bucketfuls of a lake. With a flick of the tail, Naruto threw Kisame into the air. Kisame looked down to see Naruto charging up another in his left hand. "Shit," Kisame thought when the Hokage fired the attack at him. The former Kirin swung his sword and intercepted the attack, absorbing most of the chakra, but Samehada wasn't fast enough, and the sphere of destruction detonated with its remaining chakra. The smoke in the air cleared to reveal Kisame with his cloak in shreds and his body covered in light burns. Before he could react, Naruto appeared above him and slammed his fist into his upper torso, sending him towards the ground at breakneck speeds. The nuke nin wasn't able to do anything as his body collided with the ground, leaving a large crater under him. The punch alone had broken his entire ribcage and wrecked several of his internal organs. The shark sword was working on healing Kisame as fast as it possibly could while it had the chance. In the air, Naruto's arms bulged as his hands morphed into the shape of 2 large fox heads with no eyes or fur. Both heads opened their mouths to show a set of razor-sharp teeth. Once again Naruto started to charge up, but they were in the mouths of each of his fox hands. Once they reached the size of basketballs, the imris were condensed into the size of baseballs. Both fox heads clamped down on them as a wound. Both of Naruto's arms bulged even more than before as steam escaped from between the teeth of the jaws. Kisame didn't just lay there when he saw Naruto charging up his Biju-Udama and used Suiton Great Exploding Water Colliding Wave to form a large and currently growing bubble of water around him. The two fox heads snapped open their jaws at the same time, a bright beam of crimson and black energy exploded out of each one. Biju-Udama Twin Barrel Fox's cry, Naruto yelled as the two beams shot downward and collided with the growing water ball. The effect was near instantaneous as water and steam came out explosively. The twin beams drilled through the water dome trying to reach its target below. Kisame was constantly taking in more of the chakra Samahata had absorbed and converted it into more water to feed to him. Samahata visually shrank as Kisame took more and more chakra. The two beams eventually started to thin out and dispersed as they ran out of energy. The giant orb of water, which was once mountainous in size, was now only a tenth of its original size. Naruto scowled when he saw that the attack hadn't reached its target. Both of his arms turned back to normal and he looked down at the orb, which had broken down after his attack, meaning that Kisame had stopped changing chakra into it. As he was facing towards the ground, Naruto pushed off the air with his legs, sending him down towards Kisame like a bullet. Seeing the incoming Hokage, Kisame was able to jump away from where Naruto landed and watched as chunks of earth were uprooted by the force of the collision. Without a second to let Kisame catch his breath, Naruto shot out of the dust cloud towards Kisame. As the blonde was about to land a punch, the Nuke Nin replaced himself with a large rock which was pulverized by the power behind Naruto's punch. Looking around, the battle had moved to the seashore and Kisame was currently standing on the water with Samahata in on his back. 10 water clones came out of the ocean around Kisame and charged at Naruto, who looked at the 10 with disinterest. To Naruto, this was nothing like the thrill of fighting Hashirama at the Valley of the End, in which he was having the statues of Madara and Hashirama remade. The villagers had insisted on adding his own statue to the mix to show that he was on par with even titans like the founders of Konoha. Naruto had opposed this, but he was outvoted by Hiruzen, Danzo, and Jiraiya, who agreed to the villagers' idea. Naruto ran at the 10 incoming clones and engaged them in combat. Without hesitating for a second, Naruto's landed a right hook, destroying the head of the first clone before doing a spin, hitting another one on the side with enough force to shatter bones. Another one tried to hit Naruto from behind, only for one of his tails to turn and pierce through his body. Naruto turned to his right and slammed his palm into the chest of a clone, causing it to explode. 4 down, Naruto thought, before he saw 2 clones, one from each side, going at him. Smirking, he willed 2 of his tails to wrap around the fake Samahata and lifted up both Kisame clones and smashed them into each other. The last 4 came at him at the same time from different directions. Naruto stood patiently as he waited for the 4 to get close to him. Shinra Tensei, with that one word, the last 4 clones were blown away. Suiton Super Shark Bomb. Kisame roared as a gigantic shark made out of water formed behind Kisame. The second Kisame thrusted his hands forward. The massive water shark shot towards Naruto. Naruto narrowed his eyes on the incoming attack. Guy had told him when he had fought Kisame that the which was now being used on him could absorb any ninjutsu which was being used against it and use it to grow even stronger. However, he had an ace up his sleeve. As he was about to collide with him, Naruto thrusted his own hand into it and started absorbing the faster than Samahata ever could. Normally this would be a bit straining on him since he still hadn't mastered this path, but because Kisame was now running only on the chakra Samahata had stolen from him, he was just reabsorbing his own chakra back into his body. Naruto rapidly formed another Biju-Udama, which was easily the size of himself, before it turned into a cone shape and was shot at Kisame. Seeing the incoming attack, Kisame channeled chakra into his legs and jumped high into the air. Naruto formed a one-handed sign, causing them to explode in a massive explosion. Seeing that he was within the range of the explosion, Kisame formed a shield like a dome of water around him and held Samahata towards. Naruto's tails whipped around wildly from the shockwave from his attack as he watched the dome grow. When the attack ended, Naruto could see Kisame lying on the water. His body was covered in third-degree burns and his left arm had been completely destroyed. Kisame shifted his head to see Samahata beside him. He couldn't believe how big the sword had gotten from that one attack. It was now easily about 10 times bigger than he was. Reaching out, he grabbed the handle of the sword and started to drain chakra back into his body. Kisame sighed in relief when his third-degree burns lessened to less painful yet still painful second-degree burns. His left arm was slowly being regenerated as he stood up slowly from his spot. I must admit that I have never been pushed to this level. But it's time to end this. The blue-skinned man said as Samahata started to merge into his right arm. The Godame Hokage watched as Kisame grew larger than before and looked more like a shark than before. Bring it, Sushi-chan, Naruto taunted, but his voice remained bored. Kisame charged at Naruto with newfound speed. Naruto sidestepped the attack and landed a punch to Kisame's stomach that liquefied the nuke nin's digestive system. The punch was so strong that Kisame's lower back bulged out for a second from the force Naruto put behind the punch. Naruto followed the punch with a left-handed uppercut which pulverized Kisame's jaw, sending the man high into the air, leaving a trail of blood as he flew into the sky from the force. Naruto drew both Uchiha Samu and Uarakai T and threw them at Kisame. The two legendary swords pierced through Kisame's chest, puncturing both his lungs. A smirk appeared on Naruto's face as he appeared in front of Kisame and pulled out his sword, while at the same time moving them, leaving two giant gashes parallel to each other on the Sharkman's torso. The momentum from Naruto pulling out his swords from Kisame's body turned both of them, so Naruto was now on top of him facing the ground, while Kisame was below facing the sky. Kisame's screams of agony echoed through the air. Naruto's eyes pulled with power as a black yin chakra covered the Uchiha Samu in Naruto's left hand, while white yang covered the Uarakai T. Onmyoten, Naruto said as he raised both swords into the air above him. The auras around the swords expanded greatly and started to wrap around each other, creating what seemed to look like one giant sword which was easily 3 times longer than Naruto was tall. Envoy of the End, Naruto said as he swung the fused sword down at Kisame. A massive wave of black and white chakra carried Kisame down into the ground before exploding in a dome similar to that of a detonated Bijuidama. As the smoke cleared, the only thing left that indicated that Kisame had been the one to take the attack was Samahata, which had returned to its original size and was stuck in the ground in the middle of the crater. Sheathing both his swords, the Godame floated down to where Samahata was. Reaching out, Naruto grabbed the handle of the sentient sword. Samahata started to move wildly as it made growling noises before it started to purr like a cat as Naruto's chakra entered its body. Seeing as it hadn't lashed out against him, he assumed it accepted him as its new master. Just to make sure Kisame wasn't hiding inside, he looked over it with his Tengen. He looked over to see Mei and Zabuza carrying the corpse of the former Mizukage. He had completely forgotten that Yugura was on his way to meet the Akatsuki members. Naruto assumed that the two had intercepted the Mizukage and had defeated him in battle. Well, it seems this war is over, Naruto said as he hoisted Samahata over his shoulder. The two nodded and the three walked back towards Kiri. Naruto sighed as he walked out of the shower that was built into the room he was given by Mu, who after a lot of arguing with Zabuza had become Mizukage. The swordsman had been the only other person who was qualified for the job, and in the end the two had a battle to decide who would be Mizukage. Mei won hands down thanks to her Kekkei Genkase. Zabuza had been physically stronger and faster, but Mei's Futon and ninjutsu in general proved to be too deadly for Zabuza to be able to get close. He had tried returning Samahata to Kiri as a sign of friendship between his village and Kiri, but the sword just always found a way back to him, no matter what he tried doing. Mei decided to let Naruto keep it since it would show Konoha that Kiri trusted them with one of their national treasures. The last few days had been a handful, with having to get the elders who had decided to join Mei over death to agree to joining the alliance between Konoha, Kumo, and Suna. After 3 days of arguing, Mei had given Naruto the go-ahead to kill the elders and anyone else since, even if they said they were on their side, many of their comments and actions over the days had proven the opposite. With them out of the way, Mei and Naruto had arranged a meeting between them and Gaara. He also had to deal with the revived Kushina, who had decided to go back to Konoha with him once everything was done. The Redeed acted like she hated him at first because he left her trapped in the King of Hell, but after realizing he had basically given her a chance to be with her daughter, she nearly killed him from the bone-crushing hug she gave him. The habanero was currently on a shopping spree with the new Mizukage since Mei hadn't been able to do that in years and she had been dead. He had taken the job of watching Izumi while she was recovering from her battle with him. Using his chakra, he managed to heal her eyes to the way they were the day of the massacre, which was saying a lot considering just how much she had used it over the years. He had placed seals around the room so no one could get in while he was taking a shower. Having wrapped a towel around his waist, the blonde stepped out of the bathroom and cracked open the door to the bedroom Izumi was in to check on her. He was surprised to find her sitting up on the bed looking at him. "Oh, Izumi-chan, how are you doing?" Naruto asked as he smiled warmly at her, completely forgetting that he was only in a towel. Izumi blushed and looked away when she saw what he was wearing and remembered what he had done to her during their battle and how it made her feel. "I'm good thanks to you," she said to Naruto, smiling slightly. "There is no way I could ever repay you for getting me out of the Akatsuki. I have nothing of value. But I have one thing I could give you," she said as she took her covers off, displaying her body in all of its naked glory. Outside at the base of a tree, a large man with spiky white hair laid in a pool of blood. "This kid is my one way to the top of the charts," he thought before his world went dark from blood loss. Next week, Naruto, Mei, and Gaara stood in front of a giant crowd of civilians and shinobi and a few from the other nations. Those in the crowd included Darui, Killer Bee, Temari, who was blushing while looking at Naruto, Gaia, who was as stoic as ever but had a faint pink dusting her cheeks as she focused on Naruto, Kankuro, who was looking at Mei's bust, Zabuza, Aoi, and Danzo, who had come all the way out to make sure nothing went wrong. Naruto stepped up to the front of the stage. "People of Kiri and visitors from other nations. Today is a great day. Following the victory of the rebels, we now sign a treaty which will add Kiri and Mizuno Kuni to our alliance consisting of Suna, Kumo, and Konoha. This is one step which will bring us all closer to peace, as to end bloodshed between nations. This treaty will encourage trade between our nations, as well as promote missions between villages and teams made of members from each of our members. This treaty also ensures that every village has the needs to sustain itself and a steady supply of missions. Together we will work to make both Kiri and the world as a whole a much better place," Naruto said to the people who looked at his words. When he finished, he was met with cheers and praise from them. Many from Kiri called him a hero for his slaying of an army, and word of him defeating two S-rank nukes who were going to help Gaara had spread across the country like a tsunami. "He would make an excellent husband. He's such a cutie, as well." Mei thought as she blushed a bit at the thoughts of the Hokage. Maybe she could arrange marriage between them. After all, if a marriage between clan heirs or important people within the village could strengthen a treaty, then a marriage between cages would make it infinitely stronger. Afterwards, Naruto and Danzo sat at a table in celebration after the treaty had been signed. "Well, that went well, you old warhawk," Naruto said to the bandaged man who, if one looked closely, was smiling. He actually liked Naruto as a Hokage. In the bit of time since he became Hokage, the blonde had done so much for the village, which was stronger than ever, as he brought back the training regiment that Tobirama had originally installed but was lost by the civilians. The academy graduates recently had finished with higher marks than most classes before them, excluding the one Naruto was put in with since it was filled with clan heirs. He was also the reason why his root division was allowed to be mobilized without being hidden from the Hokage. Yes, it did. "I am impressed by the level of political prowess you have for someone so young. But I shouldn't expect less from anyone who faced Madara Uchiha in combat and just a few months ago fought and defeated Hashirama Senju," Danzo said before taking a sip of his sake. The two continued to talk about some unclassified projects they had in mind for Konoha before Mei walked up to them. "Mizukage Dono, what do we owe this pleasure?" Naruto asked politely, since this was a political party after all, which had inspired the four daimyos in the alliance to leave their palaces to come. Mei blushed at the smile he was sending her, which reminded her of a fox. Clearing her though, Mei called out to everyone to make an announcement. "Attention everyone, please," she called out as everyone looked at her. "Thank you all for coming. This may never have happened if it wasn't for the Hokage of Konoha." She was cut off by Zabuza. "Minato Namikaze," which excited cheers from everyone and a death glare from both Naruto and Mei. "Zabuza, shut up or I'll kill you," they both said in an overly sweet tone. Zabuza paled rapidly and pretended to be distracted by something. "As I was saying, Naruto Namikaze," Mei continued, which exited another round of cheers. "Furthermore, I have a very important announcement." This silenced everyone to listen. "I have decided to propose a marriage contract between myself, the Mizukage, and the Hokage himself, Naruto Namikaze, to build an even stronger bridge between our two villages." She finished before everyone looked at the shell, which shocked Naruto. What was he going to do? If he accepted, he was going to get married, and if he didn't, that would be the ultimate insult to Mei and her village and could possibly ruin their newly formed relationship. Danzo looked at him with a bit of pity from being put on the spot. I accepted the marriage proposal. With that, everyone went wild as Mei claimed Naruto's lips with her own before giving him a peck on the cheek, leaving a dark blue lip mark. "We'll hold the marriage tomorrow," she said before skipping away happily that she was finally getting married before turning 30 like she thought would happen. Looking at Danzo, "What just happened?" Naruto asked as he was still trying to get a grip of the current events. "Well, you just agreed to marry the Mizukage Mei Terumi tomorrow and basically solidifying an alliance between Konoha and Kiri beyond anything the other one could do," Danzo said as if nothing had happened and drank the rest of his sake. "That's what I thought," Naruto said before he faced into his plate as he fainted. Next day. This had to be the one most dangerous days of Naruto's life. Not even facing Madara could compare to how nervous Naruto was feeling at the moment. "Today was the day he and I would get married after she proposed to me last night." Naruto thought that it had all been kind of rushed, but he was impressed on how fast everything had been set up. Literally everything was ready for the wedding, from decorations to a life-size ice sculpture of him and me hugging each other. What made it worse was Kushina was there as well, glaring at him. Beside him were Gaara and Danzo, Gaara being the best man. Naruto wore a black suit with an orange shirt, while Gaara wore the same, but with a red shirt. Danzo wore his normal attire, while A was in his cage robes as the minister Kami helped him. In front of him he could hear music start to play as Zabuza escorted Mei through the aisle since she had no living family and the man was the closest thing she had to a brother. Naruto's heart nearly stopped when he saw how gorgeous Mei looked in her dress. After they arrived at the altar, A went through the standard wedding lines, which ended in him asking me if she took Naruto as her husband. "I do," she said with a smile. Everyone's eyes were on Naruto again. "Don't fuck this up. Don't fuck this up. Don't fuck this up." "Naruto Namikaze, do you take Mei Terumi as your wife?" I asked. "I do," Naruto said. Everything was silent before the people watching exploded in cheer and clapped for the two. Mei pulled Naruto into what had to be the most passionate, most sexually arousing kiss he ever had, as the woman basically mouth raped him for nearly 5 minutes. "Welcome to the family, I guess," Naruto said nervously before she sunshined them away. No one saw the two for the next week. After everything had settled, Naruto, Danzo, Izumi, Kushina, and 200 rude Anbu went to the gates of Konoha, only to find the village on high alert and several Anbu around them the second they appeared. "What the hell happened?" Naruto asked out. Enough shit had happened in Kiri, and he didn't need even more problems the second he came back from war and an unexpected marriage. Hiruzen appeared before them slightly pale. "Hokage-sama, how was the war?" the old man asked Naruto, who narrowed his eyes on the man. "What happened?" Naruto asked. Taking in a deep breath, yesterday night at around 12 at night, Sayuri was kidnapped by Orochimaru's elite shinobi, he said to Naruto, who just stared at him without showing any outward emotion. "And what did you do about it?" Naruto asked. His voice carried no emotion whatsoever. It was almost as if he was in the middle of processing what he had just heard. "I sent Inuko in Yuzuka, Niji Hyuga, Choji Akimichi, Narumi Namikaze Uzumaki, and Shikamaru Nara to track them down and bring Sayuri-chan back. Rock Lee has also been sent out after them as backup. We sent word to Suna, but we haven't heard back." Hiruzen explained to the group who, like before, just stood there. It was then that he noticed Kushina was there with her hair whipping around violently, but any fear he would have felt for the woman was overshadowed by Naruto's form becoming engulfed in a black and red flame-like aura. "Hiruzen-san, I'm going to go save Sayuri-chan and make sure everyone is okay when I come back. I'm going to kick your ass into a mountain," Naruto said before vanishing in a burst of speed. "I'm going to see my daughter no matter what," Kushina said before going after Naruto. "Sayuri," Naruto's voice could be heard for miles. Close to the border out of Hino, the Sound 4 stopped when they heard the voice of the enraged Hokage. "We have to hurry," a man with several arms said before 5 Konoha shinobi landed in front of them. "Shit." Naruto arrived at what used to be the Valley of the End before he and Hashirama turned it into a crater. Beside him, Kushina arrived to watch the two girls fight. Naruto feared that something like this would happen. Normally a human-made seal would never compare to his own seals, however the curse seal possessed one of his few weaknesses. The curse seal used an enzyme that naturally absorbed nature chakra from the air and lowered its user to access it. Senjutsu was one of the few weaknesses he had thanks to being the Juubi. It seems that the curse seal built up enough sage chakra to negate my own seal. Naruto thought before looking down at the battle. He had been too late, and the battle had already reached its peak. Narumi had entered her Three Tails state, while Sayuri had entered her second curse mark state. Both looked fairly beat up, but were battle-able. Beside him, Kushina arrived a few seconds after he got there. "I'm stopping them," Naruto said, vanishing in a burst of speed. Sayuri glared at her best friend, who returned the glare before they started a spirit at one another. As they were about to collide, Naruto appeared between the two and grabbed their fists before throwing them to different ends of the crater. "Naruto-kun." Both thought simultaneously as they corrected themselves mid-air and landed on the water that covered the bottom of what used to be the Valley of the End. "Enough of this. Sayuri-chan, please just come back with us to Konoha. I'll explain everything once we get back home." Naruto tried to reason with his lover, who was currently under Orochimaru's influence thanks to that blasted curse mark. He didn't care what happened, he was getting the curse mark off of his girlfriend, even if it killed him. "Sorry Naru-kun, but this power that Orochimaru-sama has given me is unlike any other I've ever felt. I feel invincible," she said, giving him a fanged smirk. Going through hand signs, Sayuri breathed out a stream of fire at Naruto, who took the hit without a single flinch. The Uchiha took a step back when she saw Naruto take the entire attack without a reaction. Naruto smirked and looked back at Narumi. "Naru-chan, please let me take care of this," he said before powering down to his base form. "If you think this little boost from Orochimaru will help you beat Itachi, then you're an idiot, Sayuri." Narumi tried to go join Naruto but was held down by golden chains that came out of the ground. "It's all going to be okay, Naru-chan," a feminine voice said from behind her before she was embraced. "Ka-chan is here for you now." Narumi's eyes widened as she slowly turned her head to see a woman with violet eyes and long red hair. "No way. This is impossible," Narumi said to herself in her head. How could her mother be here? She was dead since the day she was born, yet here stood a woman who was a perfect replica of the one in all the pictures they left behind before they died. "Keika-chan?" the younger Uzumaki said, barely audible. Kushina could see the tears starting to build up in the eyes of her daughter. "That's right, Naru-chan. Ka-chan is back thanks to the blonde bastard over there," she said, glaring at the blonde who was confronting the Uchiha heiress. Narumi giggled at how her mother described her lover before she lost consciousness. "Hey Blondie. I'm taking Naru-chan back to the village. Come back in one piece, or I'll take that title of Hokage for myself," the Redeed said before jumping away. Sayuri growled, "You could bring the dead back to life. Why didn't you ever use that to bring my mother back? You always did love Narumi more than me," Sayuri cried before charging in at Naruto, who looked a bit depressed at what she had said. Did he really act like he loved Narumi more? The blonde ducked under Sayuri's attempt to stab him with a kunai and jumped back. "That's not true. Don't let the curse mark influence you," Naruto said before absorbing a large fireball from Sayuri. He knew he could easily beat her, but at this point it wasn't like it would help. He needed to destroy that curse mark without hurting her. "Nothing is influencing me," she screamed before rushing at him with a Naruto growled as he grabbed her arm and threw her. Sayuri twisted in mid-air and exhaled another stream of flames of the Hokage. Naruto uses Samahata to absorb the before drawing the Uarakai tea. The sword glowed a soft green in his hands, and he could almost feel it saying to trust in its power. "Lend me your power, Uarakai tea," Naruto spoke to himself. The blade of his sword pulsed in power. The Uzumaki's eyes snapped open to reveal a new version of his eyes. Naruto's eyes now had a pale lavender background that spread over the entire eye with 4 circular rings around the pupil. Within the first ring was Madara's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. With his new eyes he could now see the chakra coils and the chakra points in Sayuri. He could also see a second chakra system within her which stemmed from the curse seal's initial location and spread over Sayuri's entire body. His overall vision had increased dramatically, as well past what it was before. Sayuri took a step back at the sight of Naruto's new eyes. They radiate even more power than his old ones did, even if by a slight amount. While she feared them, as they brought back memories of the day that Izumi, she couldn't help but think they were beautiful. "I see, so the second set of chakra coils is sending the curse mark's chakra over her body. I get it now," Naruto thought to himself before drawing Juuchi Isamu with his left hand. The sword pulsed and started to let bloodlust, giving it a blood-red glow. "Behold the Uwarakite and the Juuchi Osamu, let me show you their power." Sayuri didn't even have time to move before Naruto cut through her left arm with Uwarakite, leaving a glowing green line where the cut was. Sayuri screamed in pain as her hand and arm went up to where the cut was returned to normal. Uwarakite is a sword that can only cut through evil and heal the good. I used it to sever the chakra coils stemming from the curse mark in your left arm. Before Naruto could finish, he saw a large fireball flying straight at him. Smirking, he swung Juuchi Osamu completely, destroying the attack. And then we have the Juuchi Osamu, a sword that will cut and destroy anything, whether it be good or bad, sentient or not, anything and everything will be cut by this blade. Even elements like fire will fall on its blade. The blonde Hokage vanished from his spot and appeared in front of Sayuri in less than a second before kicking her high into the air. The Uchiha turned in the air and breathed out several medium-sized fireballs shaped like the heads of dragons. The goddamn Hokage smiled and used his dark sword to cut through all of them before vanishing. The next thing Sayuri knew, she was getting cut dozens of times by what she could only assume was Naruto, since she couldn't see what was attacking her. Her body was littered with thin green cuts. The cuts quickly faded while Sayuri's body returned to normal as she fell down to the water. At the last second, she managed to channel enough chakra to keep herself on the surface of the water. Looking up, she looked at Naruto, who had appeared before her like an angry god. He had sheathed Juuchi Osamu and now held Uwarakite to her head. I forgot to mention that this blade can also purify the soul of any darkness forced upon it. Now it's time to end this, the blonde said before thrusting the blade into the Uchiha. From a distance, Kushina could see a large column of green light coming from the former valley of the end. I wonder what he did, she thought as she arrived at the gates of Konoha. With Naruto. The blonde now stood on the water that covered the battlefield with Sayuri sleeping in his arms. The Uzumaki smiled as he saw that the curse mark was gone for good this time. Well, time to get back to Konoha. And with that, the two were gone. 3 days later. Hiruzen, the man who had gained the titles of God of Shinobi and Sandaime Hokage, was now wearing a garbage man outfit and was picking up trash from the ground of the biggest park in Konoha. This was his punishment for screwing up and letting Sayuri get kidnapped. He was to clean up the park every day for the next week. It was both free labor for Konoha and public humiliation. He wasn't alone, however, as Kakashi and Jiraiya also had to serve their punishments. Naruto had been working hard to fortify Konoha and to locate and eliminate as many spies within the village. Thanks to his human path, he was able to find out a large amount of spies by absorbing the souls of 3 out of the Sound 4 members. The only one he had spared was Taiya, who in this world was in the same situation as Sayuri and was under Orochimaru's control. He had a stern meeting with all his and Anbu on how it was an example that 4 shinobi from an enemy village had managed to enter and kidnap a clan heiress when a group of genin was able to take them down. It was a disgrace that 4 maybe level shinobi had just waltzed in and out of the village without being detected until hours later. "You seem to be hard at work, Hokage-sama," Danzo said as he walked into the office. Naruto looked up from his endless piles of paperwork to see the old man. "I came to pick up the assignments for my rude Hanbu," the bandaged man said as he sat in one of the chairs in the office. "Ah yes," Naruto said as he picked up a thick folder that was on his desk. "Since I'm redirecting much of the Anbu to village security, your route will have an increase in missions. All the missions I'm giving you are ranked A or S. One such a mission is to find out where the hell Orochimaru is hiding out and to report back to me directly the second they find his hideout. I will not let that bastard live after what he did," Naruto said as he started to crack the wooden floor and desk. Danzo took the file and left the office. Naruto watched the man leave before looking back at the paperwork. Junk, 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 oh Bikini Friday approved, junk, junk, here we go," Naruto said as he looked at the scroll labeled Tsunade. Opening the scroll, he was bombarded with several hundred pictures of the busty blonde naked in several hot springs. "Jiraiya!" Naruto roared. Far away in a town a few miles from Konoha, a pervert shivered in fear. "Damn it. I guess I'll just go find her myself and maybe get to kill that blasted snake." He then spent the rest of his day approving of throwing away several requests from the village. Walking back home, he couldn't help but remember how Sayuri had told him that he loved Narumi more than her. That had really struck him and hadn't left his mind ever since. Thinking about it for a few seconds, the blonde came up with a brilliant idea. Running into the Uchiha compound, the blonde made his way into the temple, where the dead were buried. After a few minutes of looking, he finally found the body of Mikoto Uchiha Sayuri's mother. Grinning, Naruto went through a few hand signs before summoning the King of Hell. Naraka Path. Naruto spoke as a hand-like tongue came out of the king's mouth and grabbed onto the corpse before it dragged the body into itself. The Hokage couldn't help but smirk when the king reopened and placed a revived Mikoto Uchiha before him. "What do you think you're doing?" a chilling voice said from behind the blonde. Turning around, Naruto came face to face with the one and only Shinigami, who looked less than pleased. "Do you know how hard it's going to be to fix what you just did? Not only did you do it with Kushina Uzumaki, but you also brought back Mikoto Uchiha. The amount of paperwork I'm going to have to do is astronomical." The god said, rather annoyed about having to do extra work because the blonde did something stupid. Naruto chuckled and scratched the back of his head. "Sorry." The god of death growled at Naruto before sighing. "Just don't do it again with souls that have been dead for a while. Recently, death is one thing, but receiving souls that have been dead for a long time takes a lot of effort on my part to erase what they know of the pure world," the god said before fading away. "Minato?" they heard from behind him. The formerly dead Uchiha looked as if she had just woken up from a nap. "What's going on?" she asked, clearly confused. She knew that Minato died years before her, yet here he was, unless this was the afterlife. Looking back at her, the Uchiha saw the blonde's eyes, but instantly recognized the pattern in the middle from the many scrolls she had read on her clan. "No. I am Naruto Namikaze, a relative of Minato. As for where you are in the Uchiha tomb," the Godame Hokage said. "But I died. What did you do?" the Uchiha yelled at him as she stood up. She could see all the decaying bodies of the Uchihas who had lost their lives. "My eyes are powerful. Reviving the dead is simple for them," Naruto said before he started to make his way to the exit. Mikoto stood still for a second before she followed behind the man who apparently brought her back to life. "Where are you taking me?" she stopped him by grabbing his right arm. "To see your daughters," Naruto said. Next thing she knew, Mikoto was in a hospital room. She saw her youngest daughter on the hospital bed, while her oldest one was sleeping in a chair next to her in her real form. "Sayuri. Izumi," she yelled, waking the two. "Ka-chan," both yelled. The three embraced each other. Outside the hospital, Naruto smiled before going back to his office and giving the three Uchihas some alone time. 1 month later, Naruto stood on the roof of the Hokage's tower and looked over the village with a smile. Over the last month, he had been able to destroy Orochimaru's informants in Konoha and in the other 3 villages in his alliance. That brought him to his newest agenda, to convince Iwa to join them. That would be extremely hard since they held a grudge against the Hidden Leaf for the last 3 wars. What made it worse was that he not only looked like the Yondaime Hokage, which severely injured their forces, but related and unknown to them was also his son in another world. "Are you planning on going to Iwa?" Gaara asked as he appeared behind Naruto in a shunshin. The Kazekage had returned to Konoha for a meeting with Naruto, and Mei, involving the Akatsuki, which had already captured both of Iwa's from under their noses. It didn't help that Iwa was keeping a tight lip on the subject, nor were they their allies. "I know what you're thinking, Gaara, and yes, I'm going," Naruto said, looking back at his friend. "I'm also sending Jiraiya, Kakashi, Narumi, and Sayuri to find Tsunade and bring her back to Konoha. Can I ask you to keep an eye on them? In our world, I was attacked by the Akatsuki and Orochimaru during that mission. I don't need a repeat of what happened when I left for Kiri," the blonde stated. Gaara closed his eyes and thought about it. "I'll send Kankuro and Temari after them. I'm sorry, but I'm needed in Suna. My father tried to improve the state of the village several times but was backed into a corner, which is why he invaded Konoha. While I have made progress by finding underground gold deposits in the desert, we are still in the process of training new genin to be ready for active service. Suna no longer takes D-rank missions, so our genin needs to be ready for C-rank missions and give a high survival rate," Gaara explained to his brother. Naruto sighed. "I guess that's better than nothing. As for Iwa, I'm going with Yugao, Anko, and Kurenai. Yugao insisted on going with me. Anko wanted to thank me for removing her curse mark last week, and, as for Kurenai, I need to train her. I hate to admit it, but she is way off against people like me, an Uchiha, or anyone who is skilled at breaking the illusion she is a goner if she's fighting in A or S rank. Her taijutsu is really good, but is only at around a high level because of her lack of stamina and strength. Her ninjutsu is also lacking, since while she has the skill and ability to use them, her overfocus caused her to learn only a few basics. Naruto told his friend, who nodded in agreement. I have to start heading back to Suna now. You are always welcomed in Suna. The Redeed said before using Shunshin. Next day, Naruto waited for the 3 women who would come with him on his diplomatic mission to Iwa. He had left Hiruzen in charge of the village, but had warned him that if he returned to find the village in a state of chaos, or that something had gone terribly wrong, that garbage would be the last thing he would have to worry about, and that he would literally kick him into a mountain. We're here. Anko yelled at the 3 well-figured women who came closer to him. Yuga wasn't wearing her mask this time, as it wasn't an Anbu mission. Good, we can head out now. Naruto said calmly to the 3 before he started walking away from the village. The 3 nodded and followed closely behind him. Hokage-sama, may I ask a question? Kurenai asked her leader, who motioned for her to continue. Why did you invite me to come on this mission? The mistress asked the who cited the question. Kurenai-chan, while it is true that you are a skilled kunoichi and earned your title, you are also over-specialized. You're very intelligent and one of the most skilled users that I have ever seen who isn't an Uchiha. Your chakra control is perfect and you have a very refined taijutsu style. The problem is that your style revolves around dodging and moving away from your opponent as to cast your. If you ever fight an enemy who is able to negate you or is too fast for you to evade, you will most likely die. Naruto said gravely, never once stopping as he walked. Kurenai froze when he heard her say that she would die. Her shock turned to anger at the blonde. I knew it. You're just a sexist womanizer just like the rest. She yelled out before covering her mouth. Anko, I'm sorry ho. She didn't get to finish as a kunai landed in front of her. Naruto looked back with his eyes in full display. Come, fight me if you think I'm such a despicable person. The Crimson Eyes beauty was frozen in fear as the eyes of the tailed beast stared into her own. Kurenai looked down at the kunai before looking up to find herself chained to a stone cross. No matter how much she tried, she couldn't break the chains on her. She saw, see what I mean? You're an expert and yet this one has you cornered. With that, the world shattered back to the normal world. They dropped to their knees and started to cry. I'm sorry. Kurenai said, crying at how easily she got defeated by the blonde. He didn't even have to move from his spot to beat her. She couldn't even sense him or even had a hope in breaking it. Naruto walked towards her and kneeled down next to her. Using his thumb, he wiped away her tears before moving her head to look up at him in the eyes. Don't be sorry, Kurenai-chan, I was a bit harsh. I promise that by the time you return to Konoha you'll be able to go toe-to-toe with even Kakashi. Naruto said, grinning. The red-eyed looked shocked by this and blushed before smiling at him and nodded. And I promise that I will become stronger. And with that, the group of 4 started to make their way to Iwa. Move faster. Naruto said as he punched Kurenai in the face, sending her flying into a tree. The force from the impact splintered the tree where the kunoichi landed. A dark purple bruise was rapidly forming on her right cheek as blood dripped from her mouth. Slowly standing up, Kurenai glared at Naruto, who stood calmly across from her with a cold look on his face. His strange eyes seemed to drill into her very soul as the Hokage looked down at her as if she was but an ant at his feet. Kurenai stood up before charging at the blonde with a kunai in her hand. Naruto smiled at the effort she was putting out. While he couldn't help but admit that the kunoichi was a beauty when she looked proper, currently she looked like she had just come out of a war zone. The dress that she once wore had been torn to pieces, leaving her a pair of spandex shorts and black sports bra. His once flawless skin was measured with thin cuts and her once well-cared-for hair was a mess. When she got within range to strike him, Naruto grabbed the blade of the kunai with his bare hand. The blade didn't even cut his skin as he broke it and delivered a strong kick into Kurenai's midriff, sending her flying back into the tree she had hit before, only this time the tree fell over. On the sidelines, Anko and Yuga winced when their friend coughed up globs of blood. Naruto didn't even give her a chance as he used a doten he hadn't used since his first battle with Izumi. The red-eyed beauty used a tree as support as she got back on her feet. Naruto smiled when he saw that she wasn't giving up even when she was getting beaten so badly by him. He didn't like pushing her so hard, but he couldn't afford any weak links on any of the teams, and so far she was the weakest of the 4 in charge of the clan heirs. Good. Naruto said before bringing his figure to his mouth. The blonde bit into his figure, allowing a bit of blood to pool out. I haven't done this in forever. Summoning Jutsu Jackal Hunt. He yelled as he slammed his palm into the ground. A plume of smoke erupted from under him, but was immediately dispersed by 3 gold and black blurs. They didn't have time to dodge as the 3 blurs tackled her into the ground. Naruto smiled as everyone stared at the 3 dog-like animals growling down at her. Naruto chuckles when the 3 look back at him with a glare. Do you have any idea how long it's been since you summoned us? One of them said to Naruto, who scratched the back of his head nervously as the 3 jackals got off of the. Sorry about that, but I've been busy lately. Naruto said before the 3 vanished in a plume of smoke. Walking over to the downed Kunoichi and smiling down at her, you did good, now rest. Naruto said as he picked her up and brought her over to the 2 tents he had set up a bit away from where they had been fighting. I think you pushed her a bit too far. Yugao spoke her thoughts as she and Anko followed the blonde into the tent. Naruto placed her on top of a blanket and covered her with another. The 2 other women looked at him as he walked out of the tent and sighed. Look, I can't say much, but soon an enemy will come, and I want everyone to be ready for the battles that will happen. I'm sure you 2 have heard me and those old guys talking about a group called the Akatsuki, right? Yugao nodded while Anko looked a bit confused. Seeing the snake user's confusion, Naruto decided to elaborate a bit. The Akatsuki is a group of 9 missing nin from across the elemental nations. Each of them are capable of mass destruction and death. 2 of them are no longer in the group. I killed Kisame Hashigaki during my mission in the Hidden Mist, while the other was Izumi Uchiha, who was once known as Itachi Uchiha. Naruto told the 2. After Izumi had returned to the village, it became public knowledge of what had happened with the Uchiha clan and Itachi's true identity as Izumi. Saying that it all came as a shock to the village was an understatement. The one who was most shocked was Sayuri, who normally would have rebelled against the idea, but the effects of his sword were still in effect on her and had helped to keep her calm and understanding of what had happened. He couldn't help but smile at the tearful reunion the 2 had, which was only enhanced by his revival of their long-dead mother. Sure, he may have angered the Shinigami a bit because of the load of paperwork he added to his table, but it was worth it to see the 3 female Uchihas so happy at finally being a family again. Izumi had personally offered to help train Sayuri whenever she was free, which was quite often, since he was the Hokage and had given her an extended vacation. It was the least he could do to compensate her for the years she wasted in the Akatsuki. From what he found from some of Danzo's spies was that the Akatsuki was now targeting him along with the Jinchuriki. This had actually been both good and bad news. It was good because it meant that some of their attention would be directed at him rather than the remaining. However, it also meant that Konoha had a huge target on it, since it now had the Kyuubi, Nibi, Nanabi, and for now the Ichi along with himself. This was why it was important for him to unite the 5 nations against the Akatsuki before it was too late. He didn't want another war to spark that would cost thousands of lives. He knew that he could handle almost anyone easily if he went all out, except another Juubi or a Juubi. He had gotten lucky with Gaara being able to take control of Suna as Kazekage, thanks to it being in a state of panic because of the death of their leader. Normally it would have taken him months, maybe years to gain their trust, but thanks to a bit of influence from Konoha and Kumo's part along with the state of the village made it way easier. I had been surprisingly more chill compared to the one in his original world. The mist was out of gratitude for reviving an army, as well as taking care of the 2S rank shinobi who were joining the Mizukage's side. There was also that marriage he was tricked into, but that part wasn't bad. What could he say? Mei was one of the most attractive women he had seen so far in his entire life, was smart, strong, and had a great personality. So what do we do now, Hokage-sama? Yugao asked. This was an official mission, so she felt that she had to speak to him with the respect that came with his title, which annoyed the blonde. Naruto glared at her lightly before sighing. Well, I sent a jackal to Iwa saying we would be arriving in a few days. I guess until Kurenai wakes up we should at least train a bit. He said before giving them a fox-like smirk. Both Kunoichi started to back away from him, only for 2 clones to appear behind them. Come on, let's go. Naruto said as his clones dragged the 2 into an open field before disappearing. The 2 made a run for it only to run into an invisible wall. The hell? Anko said as she started to punch the wall in an attempt to break it and get away from the blonde and the training he was going to do with them. Naruto behind them smiled so sweetly that it was almost venomous. Are the 2 of you trying to skip out on a bit of training? To think that my bodyguards are such cowards. I bet Aniki Dono will laugh at me when he meets you too," Naruto said as he cried crocodile tears. The two looked back at him like he was insane. They had seen how Kurenai ended up after his training, which was just him sending constant attacks at her and telling her to dodge and counter-attack. "Well, how about this? I promise to only use summoning and Jinten," Naruto said to the two who stopped banging on the barrier and thought about it. Sighing, Anko turned around with her head slumped forward. "We accepted." He barely had any time to react as a golden black canine attempted to bite her head off. "Hey, I wasn't ready," she yelled childishly as she ducked under the attack, only for Naruto to appear in front of her and nail her in the face with an uppercut. Naruto smiled when he saw the women transform into a log and a puff of smoke. The Hokage jumped back as he sensed something coming up under him, which revealed itself to be a large snake. From the corner of his eye, he could see Yugao coming at him from the side with her sword drawn. "Jinten extreme movement," Naruto said out loud before appearing beside Yugao so fast he left an after image behind. Instead of attacking, the blonde gave her a rather hard slap to the behind before fading away. Naruto appeared a few meters away smirking before he was forced to evade several dozen snakes that came at him from his side. Looking over, he saw a smirking Anko holding her hands out as snakes continued to pour out of them. "You're not the only one who can summon," Naruto yelled as he slammed his palm on the ground when he landed. A massive jackal appeared in an explosion of smoke and started to rip and tear the snakes with its teeth and claws before actually eating them. "Hey, do you know how pissed off the Snake Clan will be when they find out I basically feed their members to some giant dog?" She yelled at him in an attempt to distract him when she saw Yugao picking up the sword she had dropped when Naruto spanked her. The large jackal summon stopped its feast and glared at the special. "You shouldn't have said that," Naruto said with a wide grin when he saw his summon turn its attention from the snakes to their summoner. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw Yugao coming at him at speeds which surprised him, since he had never seen the Anbu move so fast before. As the jackal charged at Anko, Naruto decided to have some fun with the purple hair beauty. The blonde ducked under her attack and swept her legs out from under her before softly punting her away. Anko summoned a larger snake to fight the large canine, only for Naruto's summon to snap at it with powerful jaws taking off the tip of its tail. Her summon hissed in pain and anger before wrapping around the jackal. Much to Anko and the snake's surprise, the jackal revealed that it had a humanoid upper body much like the Kyuubi had, which allowed it to grab the snake before it started to pry it off. Naruto's jackal howled in pain as the snake summoned it into its flesh in retaliation. Having enough of the reptile, the gold and back summon used its hand-like paws to bring part of the snake closer to its jaws before taking a devastating bite out of it. In an instant, the snake summon disappeared, leaving Anko alone with the canine, who was less than amused with the woman. Naruto sidestepped an attack from Yugao. The two had entered a beautiful dance of death as they attempted to cut her leader, while said blonde just groped her every chance he got. It was a good thing she didn't put on her armor before they started training, or the blonde would have ripped it apart just to be able to squeeze her modest yet perky C-cups. Somewhere in heaven, in another world, a white-haired man wearing a strange outfit jumped up and cheered that his student had finally embraced the path of the pervert. This, however, caught the attention of every female angel in the hot springs he was spying on. "Minato helped me," he yelled as he ran away from an army of pissed-off angels. Naruto blurred out of existence once again when Yugao attempted to decapitate him once again. The blonde appeared crouching behind her, secret finger jutsu 1,000 years of death. Naruto yelled. Yugao only had time to widen her eyes before Naruto thrusted his fingers up into her ass. The Anbu blushed as the Hokage's fingers ripped right through her pants, letting his fingers enter her asshole without anything separating his fingers from her flesh. A dark red blush spread across Yugao's cheeks as she felt Naruto penetrate her with his hands. Yugao, instead of going flying, she let out a loud moan. Naruto blushed deeply as well when he felt his skin make contact with hers, and the moan didn't help at all. Both Anko and the jackal stopped their fighting to look at the two. The canine facepalmed before disappearing in a plume of smoke, since Anko took advantage of his distraction and had several snakes wrap around him to the point where he had to return home. "Oh, I wish that was me," Anko said, pouting as she watched Yugao running away with her face in her hands. Naruto had dispersed a barrier to let her go through. Seeing his distraction, Anko decided to leave as well before he decided to train her even more. 3 days later, Naruto and his group had finally arrived at the gates of the Iwa, only to be stopped at the gates and told that they had to wait until the Tsuchikage arrived. The group of 4 was stuck waiting for 2 hours outside the gates with the guards who had apologized several times for their cage's tardiness. Eventually the 4 saw the man floating towards them with a semi-pained expression on his face. From what he knew of the other world, he assumed that the man had hurt his back once again as they arrived and had needed medical help. The old man looked over the 4 Konoha shinobi, his face never changed away from the stern expression he had. I never expected a child to be named Hokage, let alone go to a meeting with another kage with his harem. Hanoki said before floating back towards the village. The 4 from Konoha stood there shocked at what the kage had said. Hanoki looked back when he didn't hear them move. "Are you guys coming or not?" he asked. His question snapped the 4 from their trance. "If you will be staying in a house we have prepared for you for the next week. I will allow you the use of one of our training grounds, but only for Taijutsu. You are not allowed to interrupt the work of my shinobi or antagonize the people of Iwa. You have a fridge filled with different types of food, and that's it. If you want more or something else it comes out of your pocket," he said sternly. The blonde honestly couldn't blame the elder since his father had basically slaughtered their armies during the war. "That's fine. Do you mind if we take a day to get settled in?" Naruto asked politely for once, since he knew that the relations between Iwa and Konoha were strained since they had been enemies in nearly every single war so far. "Fine. Meet me tomorrow in my office at 8 a.m. sharp," the old man said before he started to float up into the air towards what he assumed was his office. Naruto sighed as he and the 3 kunoichi were led towards where they would be staying. "This is going to be fun," Naruto whispered to himself sarcastically. 4 days later. If a single word could be used to describe the state of Iowa for the last 4 days it would be nervous. For the last 4 days the 2 cages had been clashing wills for hours on end. Sometimes they would be heard throughout the village as they argued about both the alliance the Hokage was trying to forge or random things that made many of them sweat. Inoki's office. "Are you kidding me? The Princess Gale movie was way better than the Icha Icha movie," Naruto yelled out at the old man who growled at him. Said the guy who starred in it with that silver-haired chick. Inoki yelled back at the blonde who blushed at the comment. It was true that he was convinced by the perverted sage to star in his movie and had asked Kazumi since she had told him that it was her dream to do so. He figured that she would appreciate it and suggested it to Jiraiya. The 2 didn't really have sex in the movie, only pretended to under covers or had stunt doubles in their place. Sure, they did kiss several times throughout the filming and he had been forced by the pervert to grope her, but they never went all the way since they were just friends. "I only did it as a favor to Jiraiya and didn't bring Kazumi-chan into this. The 2 of us never once actually had sex," Naruto shouted back at the older yet weaker kage. He was tired of everyone assuming that he and his sensei's female counterpart were having sex behind closed doors. "What? So you're saying that all those scenes were fake? This is outrageous," the Tsuchikage yelled as he smashed his hands into his stone desk, causing it to crack. Naruto couldn't help but sweat when he saw how seriously the old man was taking it. "Can we get back on topic? I didn't really come all the way here to talk about if I banged my ex-sensei," Naruto said as he tried to get away from the topic of the movie and back to the alliance. So far they had wasted over an hour today arguing about random things from food to movies. Inoki nodded and held up the file scroll which contained the terms of the treaty. "I have no reason to accept this. From what you said, the Akatsuki had only been attacking villages in order to get there. Or have already been taken, meaning we have no reason to help you and the other villages protect theirs," the old man said seriously. Naruto frowned when he heard that he was refusing to join him and the other 4 villages were against the Akatsuki. Naruto sighed and folded his hands together. "Tsuchikage Dono, please understand that the Akatsuki will not just stop after gaining the 9. After they get them all, a fate worse than death will befall not only my village, but Suna, Kumo, Kiri, and even Iwa. What will happen will make you wish you had joined when you had the chance," Naruto said firmly. He wanted to make the situation seem as bad as it would get without revealing the fact that he was from some future parallel world. "I'm sure that the force of 4 villages is more than enough for you guys to handle this Akatsuki business. And if you failed, then chances are that they would be weakened enough for Iwa to finish them off by ourselves," the old kage argued. In his eyes, If the Akatsuki had so much power that it would take all the main nations to stop them, then either they would be destroyed anyways if they did or didn't join, or they would be able to finish them off after the other 4 villages weakened them. Plus he had used the Akatsuki's services in the past to help expand his land's borders. They had no reason to fight against them at this point. Naruto was already getting pissed off by the old man's attitude. He already knew from Gaara that the old man was going to look down on him for being so young, plus the animosity between their villages didn't help. He knew that he could easily beat any Akatsuki member one-on-one if he had to, and maybe take them all on at once, but if they had the plus a reincarnated Madara, even he would be hard-pressed. Plus, while his control over his power had increased over the time since he battled with Hashirama, he still wasn't as strong as the original Juubi, who, as far as he knew, only cared about destruction and let its power run wild. Sure, he could just rampage and would be at that level, but he preferred not destroying everything around him. "Okay, what would you like in exchange for joining our alliance?" Naruto asked. The entire time he had tried to get the man to join him and the other cage out of goodwill and logic, but maybe he just needed to tug on the man's sense of greed. Inoki grinned when the Hokage offered to give him something in exchange for him joining his alliance. In exchange for Iwa joining forces with Konoha, Kumo, Suna, and Kiri, I want the bloodlines of the Uchiha and Uzumaki from Konoha, the Sanbi from Kiri, the Black Lightning from Kumo, and the Scorch Release from Suna. Inoki said with a wide smirk. If the Hokage agreed, then Iwa would easily be able to become the strongest village with a new Jinchuriki, 2 legendary bloodlines, a Kekkei Genkai, and a way to make lightning stronger. Naruto's eyes widened before narrowing dangerously. His killer intent flooded the entire village in a wave of kai that caused all civilians, genin, and most chunin to faint, while the rest of the chunin and nearly all jounins had several hundred visions of their own deaths. Inoki himself couldn't help but shiver and break out in a cold sweat as the kid before him was covered in a layer of pitch-black chakra with red lines and symbols. His eyes, however, were what truly unnerved him. He recognized the pattern in the inner ring as the same one as Madara had decades ago. I probably should not have said that, Inoki thought as 10 tails appeared from behind Naruto. Kami helped me, he said to himself. The 2 cages found themselves in a crater several miles away from Iwa. It wasn't long after Inoki declared his conditions for an agreement that the person he thought was just a snot-nosed child went on a rampage against him. Flashback. What did you say? Naruto yelled as he shot forward and grabbed the cage by his collar. The Tsuchikage felt something that he hadn't felt in several years: fear. It wasn't as much as when the Hokage randomly transformed into a strange energy form, but his years of leadership helped calm himself. I said the cost will be the Uchiha and Uzumaki bloodlines, and I will take no less. He didn't get to finish as he was thrown through his own window. The older cage corrected himself with his and watched as Naruto floated up to him. I guess I underestimated you, brat, he said with a shaky smirk. He couldn't help the feeling of fear within him, but he would put up a strong front even if it killed him, which it might. Naruto's eyes narrowed on him. I dare you to say that one more time, the blonde said as the energy cloak flicked wildly like flames. Most of the village was either knocked out by his kai or was too scared to get in between a battle between 2 cage. Wind swirled around the 2 of them as they powered up. I want the Uchiha and Uzumaki bloodlines, Inoki insisted as he created a pale chakra pyramid between his hands. Biju Udama, Naruto yelled as he fired a cone-shaped tailed beast ball at the Tsuchikage. Inoki responded by firing his own attack. Thanks to the ability to destroy anything on a subatomic level, Inoki managed to stop Naruto's attack but wasn't able to block or dodge the powerful punch that sent him through several houses. That's it. If you want to be so unreasonable, then I'll just force you into an alliance. Naruto said to his fellow cage, but every waking person in the village heard it. In one of the houses on the outskirts of the village, the 3 women Naruto brought with him looked on with widened eyes as their cage started a fight with this village's leader. It wasn't long before a few Iwa shinobi surrounded their live quarters. Your cage has assaulted our leader. Until this matter is resolved, the 3 of you are under house arrest. Should your leader, the Hokage, be found guilty of attempting to kill the Tsuchikage without proper cause, you shall be executed, Iwa Anbu said to them. Ankle looked like she was going to start a fight with the Iwa Nin, but was stopped by Kurenai. Stop, Anko-chan, we're outnumbered, she said to her longtime friend before turning her attention to their capturers. You guys seem to be rather okay with what is going on. A battle between cages isn't a light matter," she said, only to receive a nervous chuckle. "We love our Tsuchikage and will follow him to our deaths, but this isn't the first time he's done this." When the fourth Kazekage came out, the Tsuchikage demanded the Ichibi Shukaku and both the Scorch style and Magnet style bloodlines. When the Raikage came, he asked for the Nibi, the Black Lightning and the Storm style. And when the Mizukage came before his death, he demanded his Sanbi and several other bloodlines. I guess you can say Inoki-sama has pissed off a cage from each of the 4 other villages now. The man said, a bit embarrassed because of the reputation his cage had. The 3 Konoha Kunoichi deadpanned as they heard the small explanation. Back to the battle. Naruto was currently dodging a barrage of rocks that were being thrown at him by the older cage. "Take this," Naruto said as he created a black sphere in his hand when he meant to create a Rasengan. The blonde looked down at his hand in shock at the new technique that had randomly occurred when he tried using his. The slight distraction was an opportunity that Inoki attempted to capitalize on by hurling a massive rock at the Hokage. Both cages were shocked when the ball in Naruto's hand shot forward and expanded while simultaneously looking for. The black matter molded itself into a massive shield. The boulder that Inoki threw at Naruto was pulverized by the barrier, leaving behind nothing but dust. "Well, that's new," Naruto muttered as he attempted to recreate the technique once again, only to get a surprisingly plain look compared to his usual colored one he had since he became the Juubi. "Jinten Atomic Dismantling Jutsu," Inoki yelled. A large cylinder shaped extended from in front of him but was unable to penetrate the black barrier. "What?" the old cage yelled in shock at the fact that he had connected yet failed. Naruto turned his attention back to Inoki as his barrier retracted into its ball form and floated behind the blonde's figure. 8 more joined it and simply floated behind the Hokage. "There's more now?" he asked, confused. Out of the corner of his eyes he saw another dust style coming at him. He didn't even have to react himself as one of the balls behind him acted on its own and blocked the attack when he just thought of blocking. "Great," Inoki muttered as he saw his attack was once again negated by those spheres. "Now he has some kind of barrier," he said as he attempted to figure out a way to hit the Hokage without being caught by those balls. His most powerful was already proven to be useless, and he was sure most, if not all, his Doten were not going to be able to penetrate the shields they made. He wasn't able to formulate a plan as Naruto appeared before him and punched him back into the air. The still pissed yet slightly confused blonde charged at Inoki. They attempted to dodge it, only for Naruto to grab him by the leg and throw him towards the village ground. "Give up now, Inoki-san. If you don't, I'll destroy this village," Naruto said as he charged up a massive Bijuudama and pointed it towards Iwagakure. He really wasn't going to fire it, but he needed the old man to surrender and fast before any new powers came out of nowhere and hurt the man. He was pissed at him but wasn't going to kill him. Inoki growled a bit at being backed into a corner so fast. Normally he wouldn't give up, but at the moment the blonde was able to negate his attacks and had the power to destroy his entire village with a single attack. Grrrr. "Fine. I surrender," he said as he put his hands in the air. He smiled and retracted his attack. "And you must join the alliance," Naruto added as he floated down to Inoki with his hand forward, offering a handshake. The Tsuchikage grumbled something incoherent but shook the blonde's hand. "Fine. Oh, and one more thing," Naruto said as he leaned forward so that his face was about a foot away from Inoki. An overly creepy smile spread across his lips while his eyes glowed bright red. "If you ever ask me to hand over my loved one, I'll destroy you in the slowest, most painful way possible," he said before backing off. Inoki was currently paler than Orochimaru as he watched the blonde walk back towards his village. Later that day, Naruto was laughing as Anko retold what the village shinobi had told her about Inoki and his habits of getting in way over his head sometimes. It was funny how some things changed slightly from his would, yet at the same time remained largely the same. He had heard from Gaara how stubborn Inoki was during the summit and how he had almost outright rejected him and Mei as powerful shinobi just because they were young compared to himself, especially him. Wait, so he's pissed off the cage of every village? How is this place still standing? Naruto laughed as with Anko, Kurenai and Yugao had gone out for some night training, leaving just him, Anko, and a bottle of sake he had gotten from Inoki as an apology for his behavior. He knew that the old man was basically forced to by both his son and granddaughter, yet another difference. Naruto wouldn't deny that he was having a fun time, even if Anko's sense of humor was a bit twisted at times. Well, she was trained by Irachi theme. I still have to kill him, don't I? Naruto thought it was completely obvious that Anko was going far past tipsy while downing the rest of the bottle. He was snapped out of his thoughts when he heard Anko place the bottle on the table again. Naruto went to pour a bit into his cup but only got a few drops. Why is the sake always gone? Naruto sighed before getting up. I'm going to get something to eat. Naruto said, walking towards the kitchen. After only taking a few steps, he felt something wrap around his entire body. Really, Anko-chan? A snake? Naruto asked as he substituted himself with a pillow. Oh, don't be such a stick in the mud, Hokage-sama, she said, wrapping him. Naruto raised an eyebrow when he felt her rather large breast push into his back. He then noticed that under her trench coat and mesh, the snake summoner wasn't wearing a thing. You know, not many guys even try to talk to me, and most that do are just perverts. I don't know if it's because I'm drunk or you're just that attractive, but how about I give you a little gift? She said, licking his right cheek. The blonde shuddered a bit at the feeling, but decided against acting in his primal desires since she was drunk and wasn't really in the best state of mind. Go to bed, Anko-chan, you're drunk, Naruto said, breaking her hold on him. Anko frowned as he walked out, and, as soon as she was sure that he couldn't see her, a large smirk spread across her face as she moved to her room. A bit later, Naruto sighed as he got out of his clothing and got into the soft bed he was provided as Hokage. Unlike the other beds in the house they were given, this one was much larger. What a long day, he muttered as he closed his eyes and prepared to go to sleep. His eyes, however, snapped open when he heard a noise from above him. Looking at the ceiling, he saw Anko falling down on him naked. Anko-chan, I told you to go to sleep, he said as he tried to push her off, only to find that his hands had been tied to the bedposts by snakes wearing strange armor that covered their whole body and made them look a bit like chains. Nope. 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 I am not into that sort of thing, Anko, Naruto said as he tried to break the armor with sheer strength or absorb the snake's chakra, only to find that the armor had protected the snakes from his chakra-stealing abilities and the armor was somehow holding up with his strength. Oh, hush you, Anko said, rubbing her crotch against a blonde snake-like smirk as she felt him slowly getting harder under her. I'm going to have some fun now that no one is around, she said, getting off of him. With a single movement, she tore his underwear, allowing her to see the blonde's manhood. Anko-chan, stop this now. This is your final warning. Before he could finish, Anko leaned in and took it all in one shot. Naruto held back a moan as he felt her throat tighten around his member. Anko smiled when she saw her leader fighting back the urge to enjoy her blowjob. Anko pulled back until only the head was in her mouth and went down till her nose was buried in his blonde pubic hair. Naruto fought to break the bonds on his arms, only for more armored snakes to come out and wrap around him. The fuck are these things made of? Naruto moaned out. Anko released his member, but much to the blonde's surprise, her tongue extended out of her mouth and wrapped around it. Naruto's brain was nearly turned to mush as Anko's tongue coiled around his girth. Anko leaned down and once again devoured Naruto's cock. The combined sensation of her extended tongue and her snake-like throat overwhelmed him. The snake summoner felt her Hokage's manhood twitch in her mouth. Going all in, she deep-throats him as he comes in her throat. Naruto grunted as he launched several streams of cum down his subordinate's throat. The Hokage looked at the kunoichi with a look that scared her, not because it was one of anger, but one of unending lust. You're going to regret that, Naruto said as his eyes transformed as if he were in a battle. Within a second, Naruto had ripped the snakes around him apart and turned the tables on her. My turn, he growled as his more primal side started to take over. Anko opened her mouth to say something but was unable to as Naruto speared her with his lower sword. Anko's head snapped back, letting out a silent scream as Naruto continued to plow into her. Anko looked down to see a small trail of blood coming out of her folds, and even though she was in pain, a large smile rose on her face as Naruto moved within her. Yes, don't stop. Make me yours, Anko said as the blonde went wild on her. This wasn't what she was expecting, but in her mind it was a lot better. Even now, the pain from losing her virginity today was going away thanks to the blonde reforming her private part in the shape of his manhood. Naruto reached down and gripped one of her breasts, which were bouncing wildly from the force of each of his thrusts. You are mine, Naruto growled. His voice was an octave lower than normal and filled with the untamable lust of a crazed demon. Anko reached down and rubbed her, adding to the pleasure she was currently feeling. "Take this," Naruto said, filling her with his cream. Anko moaned louder than before as her womb was filled with the blonde's cum. She didn't even notice that she herself came at the same time as her leader, since he hadn't even slowed down even after within her. Anko's eyes started to roll back as she experienced after orgasm while the blonde ravaged her body. "Kami. Harder Hokage-sama. Punish me," she cried out, writing out the constant state the blonde had placed her in. Naruto growled as he lifted her up and slammed her against the wall. "Don't you dare order me around," he said, ramming up her. Naruto covered her mouth with his own, forcing his tongue into her. Anko moaned as her mouth was dominated by the crazed shinobi. His mouth muffled her scream as she came. Naruto finally had enough and shot several more squirts into her. Anko's eyes closed as exhaustion overcame her and she fell asleep. In the blonde's arms. Naruto's eyes fluttered as he came back to his senses. Looking around him, his mouth dropped at the state he and Anko were in. "What the fuck did I do?" he yelled out before hearing a few light snores coming from Anko. Naruto said as he pulled out from her and carried her over to his bed and covered her with his blanket. Naruto walked out of the room and left the house. "Had fun?" Naruto heard next to him as he sat on one of the rocks that littered the outside of the village. Looking over, he saw Ace standing there with Mabui by his side. Beside him was his assistant and wife Mabui. "Ace-san, what are you doing here?" Naruto asked the Raikage. "I was here because I heard you were going to meet with that old man Inoki and wanted to give you a warning, but it seems there are two things I'm not fast in, if you know what I mean." A laughed while Mabui blushed at the message in A's words. Naruto chuckled before feeling a heavy hand rest on his shoulder. Looking at A, he saw the serious expression on his face. "That wasn't one of my girls you were messing around with, was it?" the Raikage said. "No, it was Anko-chan." Before he could finish, A punched him into a mountain with a lightning-covered fist. The blonde dug his way out of the rocks that had fallen on him and glared at the Raikage. "What was that for?" they yelled at the older Kage, who scowled at him. "I let you marry my girls, and you haven't even taken the virginity of a single one of them. But here you are having sex with a kunoichi you aren't even married to. You. Please explain it to my fists." A yelled as his entire body was covered in his lightning armor. Naruto spent the rest of the night dodging the Raikage's attacks while Mabui cheered her husband on from the sidelines. Next day, both A and Naruto walked towards their respective villages, tired from a long night of A chasing the blonde while the Hokage tried his hardest to avoid him. The end. Thanks for watching my video. Leave a like if you enjoyed my video and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. See you next time. Till then, sayonara.